So what we're going to have a look at now is we're going to go across to having a look at Instagram and Photoshop. So the whole object of this is to make very good quality images using Photoshop and transfer them across to Instagram. So we're just going to cross to slides. So when we look at Instagram, we've got certain dimensions of Instagram posts that we can actually use. So if we look at the ones that I commonly use is the square photo, which is here. So this one, look at here, is the square photo. Aspect 1:1 is 1080 by 1080 pixels. So we're going to look at this and put it into Photoshop to make this this Photoshop square photo. The other ones that we've got most commonly in terms of photographs are my landscape photo, which is 1080 by 608, or the portrait photo here, which is this one here, 1080 by 1350. So as we go is I'm going to jump across to slides, and then we're going to see if we can jump across to Photoshop where I'll be doing the demonstrations. So it's almost like a live demonstration as we go. So the first thing is if we go into it, we have to open up the original image. So the nice thing about using Instagram is that with the original images that we can use very high quality images from our digital single lens reflex. So then we can make our adjustments from that original image actually within Photoshop itself. So I'm going to come out of that, and then where I want to go to now is share the application, and I'm going to jump across now to my Photoshop. So everyone should see now my Photoshop screen. So with here is that I've got an image which I'm going to use, and to put that up I'm going to go to File and Open. So this is the original good quality image. It's on my desktop, and that is my JPEG image. Okay. So as you see, that is a picture in a gallery. Now what I do is I quickly do a quick introduction about myself. So I'm actually an artist, and I've got a fine art background. So I did my degree in fine art many years ago. And I teach at the University of Arts London for the short courses in London LCC, London College of Communication. And I teach the Creative Cloud, which is Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. And I also teach a bit of WordPress. So my background is very much a painting background, but I'm also quite proficient in using the digital formats. So this is the image. So an image taken in a gallery, and as you see, it's a bit it's got a color cast on it, and it's not quite square. So what I'm going to concentrate on now is doing a little bit of adjustment actually within Photoshop to then put that across eventually to my Instagram. So I'm going to see what I can do with this. Command plus enables me to zoom in, Command minus zooms out. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do some color balancing. So if there's any artists out there and they've got their photographs, one of the useful ways of doing a photograph is photographing next to a grey card. So on the left-hand side, you can see a little grey card just here, around here, and that enables me to go in and make some adjustments. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to make a new adjustment layer over the top. Sorry, wrong one. and I'm going to go into my curves. So when I click around my curves, you can see it's making adjustment to the whole of my image. I don't need those. I clicked on those by mistake. Okay, but I'll leave it as it is. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, with my curves, click on here, click on the Alt, and bring that down. And as I bring it down in my curves, my levels, you just see it starts to bring in most of the image. But I want to bring it down now, so I'm just clipping off just that little bit of white. So you can turn that off, you can turn that on. You can see I've just lightened it up slightly. I've still got a slight color shift by that because it's taken under an electric light. So with my grey here, that's my mid-grey, I can click on my mid-grey card. So this will take off the color shift. So that mid-grey is a proper mid-grey. If I click on it, you can see now that the background is almost a proper grey without that yellow color shift. And I'm now going to go to my crop tool, and underneath here I've got my perspective crop, and I can start to crop in and crop my painting out of the gallery wall. So this tool is particularly useful for things like paintings because it's going to make everything square. Click on there, and I've now got a nice square painting with my color shift. I've also got a little problem up here in which you can see if I zoom in a bit, use the hand to come down, is I've got, take the properties away, I've got a little bit of the light here. So I want to get rid of that again to make it, I'm going to put another layer above it, and then with that layer I'm going to use my clone stamp. And with my clone stamp, I want to sample all layers above. So I've clicked here for my clone stamp. I'm going across beneath it, and then I'm holding down an Alt key that goes into a target, clicking it, so it's that target area, and then going across to there. I'm just going to move that so it's all lined up. Click on it, and that has taken off that light. So zoom out. So the way that I've done this is that I've done my adjustment with my curves, and I've done my little bit of adjustment using my clone stamp to clone out that little bit of imperfection. And if I look now at my image size, so I'm going to go to image size down here, you'll see it's 1511 by 2203. So it's bigger than my Instagram square that we looked at on the first slide. Okay. But what we are going to do with this is just save it in that original pixel information, that larger pixel size, and we'll just save this on the desktop. So I'm going to save it onto my computer, and I'm saving that as, I'm going to call it UAL PSD. So that's my Photoshop document. And click on save, and that has saved it, and click OK. So now what I'm going to do is look at my shared files again, share now, and just explain what I've done with those. So this is where I was, and we'd made our adjustments. So there's original pixel size. We made my adjustments on here using my curves. Now the next stage is we're going to make a new Photoshop document to the Instagram square. So I've done all my adjustments with the original image and then making a new adjustment with my Photoshop in my Instagram square dimensions. So I'm going to now jump across to my share application screen again. I'm going to go to my Photoshop document. So that's where we were. Great, so that's where we were. So, and I'm going to now go to File and New, and I want an Instagram square. I've already got one set up, but what I want to do is a new one, and I'm just going to go quickly to my web, so it doesn't matter where you are with this. Web gives me the things for sort of website design. But what I want to do is in pixel dimensions is put this into my 1080 by 1080. So I'm working in my Instagram square. Resolution, I will keep this at my 72 pixels per inch. It doesn't matter so much because the resolution depends on what device you're looking at in. Photoshop actually likes it at the 72 pixels per inch. Color mode is, we've got different color modes, so we make sure we're in my RGB. A color profile, and I'm going to just go to my standard RGB. Okay, so that you're not going to get too much of a color shift when it goes across to my Instagram account on my iPhone. So to recap, is what I've done is that I put in my dimensions 1080 by 1080 and put it in my pixel resolution 72, make sure that's RGB and standard RGB. Okay, and I can actually save this, so if you're doing a lot of them.
And do you want to make a Photoshop full screen as well? That's the last comment. Sorry to interrupt you again.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
If you could make the Photoshop full screen as well, I think it's going to be a little bit clearer.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I click on create that, and then if I go on this one, click on plus full screen. Yeah.
Perfect.
So what we've got now is we've got it's done it actually as an artboard, which is fine. But I'm going to now go to File and place in my linked. Now I'm going to place in that JPEG that I have just made and place it in to my Photoshop document. Okay. Wrong one. Sorry. File and place linked. So this one. So this is the one that I've just done. Okay. So as you see, that's my image that has been cropped down and my image that has been color balanced. So that is in my Instagram square. And I can just line that up so that I'm just putting it in the center. So it lines it up. Now, once it's in my Instagram square, I know I've got it in the right dimensions. So just to double check that, I'm going to image and image size. I'll click on tick. So afterwards, click on tick. Go to image and go to image size. And you can see that's in the right dimensions now for my Instagram square. 1080 by 1080. I'm also now going to do something in this, in which I'm going to go to filter and I'm going to sharpen it using my unsharp mask. Now the reason I do this actually within the Instagram square is that if you start to sharpen things actually in the previous document, you're not necessarily going to get the desired result because you're sharpening it possibly at a higher resolution. So sharpening it just makes it that the image slightly pops out. So I'm just going to click on here. It's often best to do it by eye, radius. If I go way over the top, you see it's too sharp. So I'm just going to bring that down so things are just a little bit sharper than it was before. Okay, and click OK. So I've got my image. I put it in my Instagram square. So now the object is, we're going to now go to File and export that for web. So that's the original one. That is the one that we're going to export. And we're going to put it across to very high. So quality 80. And convert to standard RGB. Just click off and on. Now, because we were already working in standard RGB, you're not getting much of a color shift. So that is all looking good. And click on Save. And that is my Instagram JPEG, which I am now going to transfer across to my phone. So I've got something set up here. I'm going to stop my sharing now. And we have done something now in which we've done it in Photoshop. And just to have a look at here, just to go through to my slides again. So these are my slides here. And so making new Photoshop documents, and I'm going to recap it a little bit because it's easier, is the first thing is so to make up your Photoshop document, you first of all make up your Instagram. So the file is 1080 by 1080 for my Instagram square. So that's what we did first. Then we can transform that file. So, and then sharpen it. So you sharpen the image using unsharp mask. Then you save it. So you save it usually at a very high resolution, very high quality as your JPEG. So once you saved it, the next stage is we want to transfer that across to my phone. Now, the easiest way of doing this is you can do various ways of doing it. You can email it to yourself, or you can do it in other ways. But I like to use my Google Drive. Okay, so I'm now going to share again, and we're going to quickly look at how to put that into Google Drive, and then I'm going to open up my phone and look at it on my phone. So I'm going to share my application. I'm going to go again to my entire screen. Share that. So you should see my entire screen, and I'm going to now see if I can go to here. That is my Google Drive. So Google Drive is part of my Google thing. I can then go to add new, upload a file, and then just navigate through to that Instagram JPEG that I just made. So I've done it previously just to check everything's working. So I've got two now, so I've got that there. Okay, so I'm now going to come out of that, and we are now going to go across to another application. So I hope this is going to work. So this one is, I've got my phone plugged in, so you should be able to see my phone, and my Google Drive will be on my phone. So I'm going to show applications again. So hopefully this is going to work. Give me a shout if it isn't. So we're going to go to something called my QuickTime, in which I can plug in my phone, so you should be able to see my phone. So can you see that? Yep. So that's my account here, and I've just got my phone in my hand now, and I'm just going to click on here, and you should be able to see my Instagram account and my drive here. So that's my drive, and I'm just going to go across now to that one that I just put in, and I can now click on here, and I can now go across and open in. So this is all part of the Google Drive. I can open it directly actually into Instagram itself. So we're just going to write a caption. So this is the painting that I had done, and it is called Treasure Under the Sea, and return. And it was an ink and acrylic on silk. Another return. And I'm just going to put in part of the demonstration for UAL. Return. Didn't like UAL. So I put UAL again. UAL. And click on that one. Return. Hashtag UAL. Return. Hashtag. And then I could put LCC, where I teach, and LCC short courses. Again, return. Then I do some things with this. This is a painting. I might do silk, and I might do abstracts. Okay, click OK and share, and that has now gone across to my Instagram account. So just to double check this worked. So I'm doing this live, so it's a bit. There we go, and let's click on it, refresh it, and there we go. So that is the Instagram post that I've made. You can see that it's all there. Treasure Under the Sea, part of the dimensions, and my hashtags are in there. So I'm just going to quickly look at my Instagram account just to run through some of the things that you can actually use your posts for doing it. Here I've got obviously the one that we've just done. This one gives me more, almost like a close-up. So when you're working with Instagram, it's a good idea not just to post almost like the same image again and again, but to do things with different stories and different contexts. This one shows it in one of my galleries. So that's one of my other paintings in my gallery. And if I scrolling down, that's almost like a studio shot for a couple of paintings that I was working on. That's again studio shot for my studio, of me working in the studio. So everything like this which I'm doing is that some of it I will do actually just directly from my phone. And at other times when I want to be more precise, I'll actually go in and start to do some demonstrations actually within Photoshop. So if we go down, so another way of doing it is this one. So this one would have been done on the phone. Then as I scroll this across, these are some of the sketches that I've then edited directly in Photoshop and then posted it in. So as we go down, another good idea is not just to do your still lives. Another thing that you can do is basic shots like that, giving talks. So again, things. This one is a little video that I did, giving almost like a little preview of what we're doing actually within this particular gallery, and looking in with the gallery. So keep your Instagram posts sort of lively with different variations, and I'm just going to come out of that. Now going to jump back to here, so I'm going to stop my sharing. Okay, so you should be able to see me. So we've got another few minutes just to do some questions. But to sum up of what we've done in terms of using Photoshop together with your phone and Instagram, is to do your original editing. So anything that you do in your color correction, do in your original pixel size. So it might be a large digital single lens reflex image that you've got. So you do things like your color correction in that, and maybe doing a clone stamp or something like that you want to adjust, and then cropping it. So that's all done in your original pixel size. So, and the next stage is that once you've done that, you can save it as a Photoshop document, and then open up a new document in which you had then got your Instagram sized Photoshop. Okay, so you make up a new document with your 1080 if you're using your Instagram Square, 1080 by 1080, and then place it in your Photoshop document, then sharpen it in there, save it, put it across to Google Drive, and then from your phone, you go to your Google Drive, you can then put it into your Instagram. So then you're getting very, very good quality photos, actually probably better than you're getting from the phone, because you're doing very accurate color corrections actually using Photoshop. So if there's any questions, we've got a bit of time in which we can do some questions. Because there's so many of us, is we can do a few questions, but then maybe if there's any more, maybe just to email me via the arts website.
Thank you. That was really interesting, really useful. Sorry for the technical problems at the beginning, guys. So we have Jarna asking, seeing your grid, what sort of images do you recommend using a white frame for? Art posts is one, but what else do you think it's visually appropriate for?
I tend to use the white one, in which I tend to use mainly the white one. There's one that I've done with black, because if you're using a very white painting, it's to do with contrasts. So if you're using a very white painting, you might want to put it on a black background. I tend to get more likes when I put it onto a white background for some reason. I think it comes out more. So often it tends to be more of the contrast. So looking at the contrast, and it tends to be that the more images I put with a higher tonal contrast gets more likes than the ones with the lower tonal contrast.
Okay. Jarna asks if you have any tips for working with Adobe Illustrator as opposed to Photoshop. Any quick tips? I understand it might be not a quick area to delve into, but
things with Illustrator, it tends to be more to do with vector images. So you're using more like shapes. So if you're using photos, you would definitely go into for Photoshop, But if you're doing a logo or something like that, I mean, some artists use Illustrator if that's their style. If they've got a more graphic style, you would use Illustrator. But from Illustrator, you can also save that for web, and then you can also save that as a JPEG in exactly the same way as I did for Photoshop. So to recap on that, is a Photoshop you would do definitely with photographs. If you've got a more graphic image using your shapes, then you would use Illustrator.
Okay. Do you have any tips on promoting work through Instagram?
Do I use any tips for? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do you have any tips in promoting work through Instagram? How do you promote your work through Instagram?
A lot of time is I use Instagram very much as a portfolio. So the way that I was showing you is to have some variety actually within the portfolio that you actually got. So you're not actually just repeating it. Then to promote it, it's a good idea to get communication with other people actually who are using Instagram. So that tends to be a very good way of doing it. So you can like people and then get into comments and get into some conversation. So often when you're doing it is you get into use Instagram very much more as a communication tool rather than just putting up just images. And you could do that by liking other people's work. You can follow other people, comment on them, and they tend to then follow you back and then comment on your work. And then you get a sort of following. So using it as more of a community sort of based things rather than just putting things up and just leaving it. That's the best way of doing it. Also, I tend to, when you're seeing people, say you might go to private view, or you might be going into a gallery, and you might be even seeing a gallery owner, and they might become interested in your work. You can just take your phone out and you can actually use that as a way in which you can talk about your work. So I tend to actually like that in a way, instead of talking abstractly about your work, you've got the Instagram on your phone, you open up your Instagram account, click on your image, and then you can talk about it and then show the person the image. Doing it that way, again, is almost like using Instagram as a communication tool. And then you get into the conversation, and then you can ask them, can I follow you? And then you maybe follow their account, they follow you back. And again, you're starting up to that sort of using Instagram as a communication tool.
Sarah asks if you have used any other software. If so, any other recommendations? She said she uses VSCO for her Instagram posts, as she likes to lower down the exposure.
Yeah, there are other ones. When I'm using things, actually, I tend to, on my laptop, I tend to just use Photoshop. When I'm on the phone, there's something called, I'm just going to have a quick look at it. On the phone, the Square Fit and Regrammer. Those are the main ones that I use. So Square Fit is where I might have something and I can put that into my Instagram square, a bit like I did on Photoshop, but you can actually do it on your phone. So you can have a square and you can put your image in, and then you can crop it and then put it into your square. The problem with doing that is you're getting the image in and you can't really do the fine adjustments that you can in Photoshop. You can do it in Square Fit, and then if you're doing a white background, you can put it into Instagram, and you can do a little bit of the fiddling around with your adjustments actually in Instagram. But it's not as precise as doing it in Photoshop.
Okay, thank you. Tovar asks, how important is storytelling and visual coherence in the overall Instagram feed?
I would say it's of vital importance really. That's why it's a good idea not to have almost like repeating the same thing again and again. So and it can be quite basic, is like a studio shot or something that you're working in the studio. Give some sort of an idea of a context where you're actually coming from. So it's a good idea to keep it varied. The video feeds are very good. So video feeds, again, you can do almost like your live Instagram feeds. Again, is keeping up that storytelling context by keeping things varied as you're putting it up.
Okay, would you recommend using the Photoshop presets at all?
I tend not to. You can quickly. I tend to like to do things through the curves because you can actually make it very, very accurate using curves. Particularly now, it depends what you're doing. Is that if I am taking a photograph with the grayscale, I know that's with the grey card. I know I can do my adjustment, click on the grey card, and that's going to be accurate, like an accurate grey. So when I've got an accurate grey, then I know where I'm going with that.
Let's see. How do you create uniqueness on Instagram? That's a big question.
It's a question of your style, I think, if I'm not copying. But that probably takes a long time to develop. I think there's two things with it. Is you don't want your Instagram feeds to be all over the place. So what you don't want is, I don't know. I tend to have my Instagram account different. I don't put too much on in terms of things I'm doing with the family or pictures of the children or pictures of the garden. I keep that separate. I keep my Instagram account tend to be just for my artwork. So that's to do with consistency. So I would say consistency is probably more important in some ways than uniqueness. So when you're putting the things up, you're almost like a consistent story across, or a consistent way of uploading things. If you're using a white background, it tends to be choose mainly the white background that you're doing things. So you're getting a consistent terms in your presentation. When it comes to uniqueness, that's more of almost like the creative input that you're putting in, and that's almost like finding your own voice. But my way of looking at it is that once you've found your own voice, which takes some years to develop, you have different influences, you look at different artwork. Once you've found that voice, you don't want to jump all over the place. So experiment, find your own voice, see whether you can get that unique, and then be consistent with that own voice. I sometimes have trouble with some of my galleries. They want me to do one sort of artwork and then another sort of artwork, depending on what they sell. But I try to keep the voice sort of fairly consistent.
Okay. Emma asks, how do you control the curves in Photoshop?
How do you control the curves? When you're looking at it, I've just jumped in. I've given you almost like a quick step-by-step guide of how to do it. When you come to look at curves, it's actually much more complex than I showed you. You basically got a curve for your red channel, your green channel, and your blue channel. So you can control your red channel, red, green, and blue channel separately. The way that I did it was to go to my RGB, which is all together, and then looking at it in terms of lightening and darkening it, and looking at my levels at the bottom.
We have another question about the aesthetic, which I guess you sort of covered already. Robert, do you think we should abandon the whole grid aesthetic a lot of brands are doing? Hermes is a good example of this. Or do you think it's good for everybody to have an aesthetic?
Do you mean the presentation? I'm not sure what she means by the grid aesthetic. Does she mean looking at the grid, or how it looks? There are different ways of doing it, but I tend to use the grid format because people know where they're going with it. So you can look at it, you look at your things. The nice thing with the grid way of doing it is people that are looking at it know exactly where they're following. So when you look at the grid, you can jump across from one picture to another. So it's easy for people to scroll through.
How often should we post on Instagram?
I think once every 2 days or once a day is good. Also maybe look at the times as well. You don't. I find 4 or 5 o'clock quite good. 5 o'clock is good. Because if you're doing it at 5 o'clock, it tends to be when people are coming home from work, and then you tend to get more likes when you're doing it at 5 o'clock than you do if at maybe 10 o'clock at night. You're not going to get so many likes. So
Okay.
I would do it once or twice a day at 5 o'clock, and keep the times as consistent as you can.
Okay. Probably the last question. Might have time for one or two more. Eva asks, if you hide the name of the profile and scroll and scroll and scroll, you would be able to understand which profile it is, which brand it is. How do we make this impact? Having
I don't quite understand that. So if you mean you're scrolling down and you lose a profile?
No, if the person is scrolling, you could almost take away the brand name, but then you're still going to understand what the brand is because their aesthetic is so strong. How do you achieve that? I don't know if that's probably too big a question to actually answer.
There's various ways of doing that. You could put something like a logo or something within your images. That's a possibility. I don't do that because it doesn't actually achieve what I want to achieve on my painting. But if, for example, if you've got a brand of clothing, for example, and you've got a logo for that brand of clothing, you could just put that logo at, say, one of the side of your images. That's a possibility. The other thing is just to keep things sort of fairly consistent. So again, it's not jumping all over the place. So you might have a particular color, particular background that you're using, and just keep that consistent. That's consistency across your posts.
Okay, fabulous. Thanks to Robert for joining us today. We've actually just run out of time for Monday.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.